We've got some really, really wild weather in Sydney at the moment. I know not all of you are in Sydney, but we've suddenly had so much rain and the temperature has dropped radically. So it's uh it's been a bit of a thing. And Sarah's had it too. We've all got glitchy internet. The world's falling apart. What's happening? Okay, I'm just gonna let a few more people in. Welcome. Lovely to be with you all for day three of the relationship mirror. So, for those of you who maybe you've been with us the last couple of days, or perhaps you haven't had a chance yet to catch up with the replay, so I'll just give a little recap. On day one, I shared with you some insights and some teachings and some philosophy around relationships through the lens of yoga, but also touching on some modern psychology ideas and lived experience, our own examples. Yesterday, we had a beautiful healing session with Sarah where she specifically worked through four blocks that show up very commonly in relationships. So that was, yeah, really, really beautiful. I was scribbling notes the whole time. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons I have to listen to the replay when I do Sarah's work is because one time I'm listening and absorbing, and other times I'm taking lots of notes. And today we're opening up for Q&A. So we would love to hear any questions that you have, and we're also very open to hearing about specific areas in your relationship that might need some healing or some extra support. What are we? Just under 10. We're nine people, and then Sarah and I. We are definitely able to give, or Sarah is willing to give some short little healings specifically and individually. Obviously, there's a limitation with that on time. But if you have something particular going on in your life that you'd really like some extra support with right now, we can definitely dive into that as well. And it's often the case I have found in groups like this that there's a sort of collective energy anyway. Like sometimes when something comes up for one person, it tends to be a theme that runs through for several of us. So you're very welcome to ask me a question, to ask Sarah, simply to share what's come up with you over the last few days. And if you have a specific request for some healing or some extra support with something particular that's going on, we're very open to that as well. Does anyone feel like being brave and starting us off, jumping in? Chelsea's just saying in the chat that she hasn't had a chance to watch the healing for yesterday. Does it matter for today? No, absolutely not. I mean, obviously go back and listen to it because that'd be great. But yeah, definitely it's totally fine to catch up and still be here now. No problem. And Megan's saying, I can't talk much because I'm at work, but I can type. Yeah, so if you're not able to, if you don't want to unmute yourself and speak, which is better if you can, but if you can't, go ahead and type something in the chat. That's also fine. Okay, let's dive in with Megan first. Okay, she says, I'm currently separated and I've had to give him a time limit. Oh, I mean, I know a bit of your backstory. I mean, I'm gonna say I'm glad that you're separated. I don't know if that's a good thing to say to someone, but I've seen you for a long time really struggling and, doing that thing that women often do, trying to make it work. And um, I'm going to talk about a book I've been reading recently, which I'm not saying this is what you've been going through, Megan. So I just want to be very clear that I'm not conflating this with your situation, but it seems and feels relevant. And I've also had times in my life where this has felt relevant. And the broader thing I want to talk about here is women gaslighting themselves, where we make everything our fault, and we get very clever at kind of twisting things to be on us. I have recently been down this rabbit hole reading a few different memoirs from people who've left evangelical cults or Christian, like very extreme situations that have tipped into abuse. And I was talking about this on day one as well. I will put the book references for those of you who are interested. It may not interest many of you, but I'll put the book references into the chat or into the portal. Um, The reason I got interested and curious about this is because a pattern that I read about not so long ago is that the largest demographic of women experiencing domestic abuse, I'm not going to use the word domestic violence because it's not necessarily physical violence. It might be emotional, it might be financial. There's a whole different or coercive control, stalking, all kinds of different ways that this can show up. Um, but the demographic that is rising in Australia the most is the higher socioeconomic, educated women that we would possibly make assumptions wouldn't get themselves into situations of coercive control, uh, domestic abuse, etc., etc. And of course, this exists on a spectrum, right? And there's lots of nuance and there's lots of shades of grey here. But the books that I've been reading have been written by women who are very intelligent, well educated, uh, and they're surprising candidates to find themselves in these highly toxic situations. And one of the phenomena that came out of these books, sort of across the board, and this kind of tips into cult stuff as well. How do people get enticed into cults, which is another form of relationship, right? Um, is that they would often blame themselves or blame their own behaviors when something bad was happening to them. So, for example, in these particular situations, an example of gaslighting would be a man perpetrates against you, and then you say to yourself, it's my fault it happened because I wasn't surrendered enough, right? Like I wasn't in my feminine enough. And I therefore, you know, sort of became antagonistic and I should have just surrendered and been more feminine and then this wouldn't have happened to me. And it goes all the way through all different sort of scenarios and possibilities. But the point is, as a gender archetype, women are far, far more predisposed to see their own fault and to take responsibility, even to the point of gaslighting themselves, than men. And that often we will stay in situations that are not appropriate or helpful to stay in because we are really focused on taking responsibility and fixing. And I guess one of the points I want to make here is relationships are a two-way street. It does require both people doing the work and being willing to meet each other in a middle place. And so, because I've been through that myself in relationships more than once, I also I have a sort of spidey sense for it, and I can kind of energetically feel when a woman is overworking to fix her relationship and not being met in that regard. And without projecting onto you, Megan, I definitely feel like my what I witnessed in you, I don't know if that's your experience, was a woman overworking to fix something where she wasn't being met in the same way. Doesn't mean that won't ever change. That can change. People change all the time. So it doesn't mean it's fixed forever. But I do want to, yeah, reflect that back to you and also say that it's an archetype that, is as old as time. It's not new. It's something that women have done forever. Um, I don't know if that resonates or if you're able to even respond right now because I can see that you're at work. I'll let you pop something in the chat. But anyway, what Megan's asking for is a healing around dealing with a husband who's half in and half out. And I guess I would kind of add to that, perhaps as a broader healing for those of us who have had the experience of gaslighting ourselves and taking more responsibility, perhaps, than we should, which I think is very common for women.
So, what I'm thinking is I'm writing down notes and keeping an eye on the chat as well, and that we collect all the bits and then we do a big healing at the end rather than little bits, little bits, little bits. Does that work, Katie?
I think that sounds perfect. That
Okay.
definitely sounds like a plan. Is there anything you want to say about the gaslighting piece, Sarah? I feel like I
Yeah,
could have articulated that better. I'm not sure I got that out in a way that was as
yeah.
clear as I wanted it to be, but
No,
you get the gist.
yeah, totally. I think it is something that we really can do to ourselves. And we ask ourselves, was it really that bad? Or was I just making it up in my head? We go down that line of questioning. And then Here's what I am starting to recommend, or how I'm starting to speak to my clients and even myself around relationships. Because I think we can get so stuck on, are they my soulmate? Am I leaving my soulmate? Is this person the right person with me? If I leave them, am I going to regret it? Well, I have guilt, and this is another way that we gaslight ourselves. We question all the things. But if we really simplify it to what is our purpose on this planet, and our purpose, our overall purpose is to expand our soul, then the only question is when it comes to relationships, is this expanding my soul or is it dimming my light? And when we can look at relationships through that lens, it's no longer personal. It's not like we're not over analyzing and thinking, well, what if they are my soulmate and I leave them and then they meet someone else and then they get married and then they're the most amazing husband to this we can go down that road. But then the real question is this actually good for my soul? Is this good for my soul's expansion? And that doesn't mean to say, oh, you just give up straight away. But I think there's definitely an opportunity to just explore that question. Is it having me reveal more of my light or is it dimming my light? And what also, like, what pattern am I playing out of those four relationship patterns that I spoke about yesterday? Whereas, again, that idea of radical responsibility without gaslighting ourselves, what is this relationship actually here to teach us? Because not all relationships are meant to last. That's just the truth of it. Some relationships come in fact, a lot of relationships come in to trigger our deeper wounding so that we can heal it, so that we can evolve to the next soul lesson, not to stay and keep banging our head against a brick wall. And so I never, ever, ever give advice to anyone. And Katie knows this. She has worked with me through relationship stuff. And I never, ever said to Katie, you need to leave. It was always Katie's decision. My job is just to shine the light, and that's the same with any client that I ever work with. But if you can just really distill it down from rather than sorry, I forgot to put that on Do Not Disturb. You can distill it down out of the mind because when the mind's trying to work it out, you just got a whole lot of interference running. But if you can distill it down to the soul level, which is, okay, what is my deeper purpose here? It is to reveal more of my light. And when I reveal more of my light, I raise the vibration of humanity. I'm available for more to receive more miracles, more opportunities, more of all the things that my soul actually desires. So is that happening or is my light contracting? And when we can distill it to that level, it just kind of really simplifies our decision making. It's all the thinking, it's all the interference that confuses us. So if you can just really pause and take some time to contemplate it. And I'm not sure if you were on yesterday, Megan, or if you've had a chance to watch to go through that healing, but I talk about the four core. There are obviously others, but they're the most common. And to really look at, well, what relationship pattern am I playing out here that is actually crying out to be healed? And maybe that's why you attracted this partnership that's half in, half out, is because the soul lesson so desperately wants to be healed because you're ready to graduate to the next one. And so when we can start to look at it from the spiritual laws of love rather than the ego, rather than the grasping, rather than what we think we want, we're in a much more powerful place to make a decision. And then the only other thing I would say is that, and actually two more things. There was something I said yesterday, which is I have got that on Do Not Disturb and it is still happening. I'm so sorry. There's literally interference coming in right now. I've turned it off.
Nothing is by accident. This is like a
Nothing.
symbol. This is a symbol for exactly what you're talking about.
So it's firstly, it's okay to be disappointed if a relationship ends, even if you know it's the best thing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's okay if a relationship doesn't work out as long as your soul is expanding. So they're just the two messages that I would have around that.
I love it so much because it feels so clear. And I think the reason for Sarah to have such clarity around it is because it's not sticky for her personally at this time in her life. So, when you can kind of see something that just has such clarity, because it's not your lived experience at that time. And for me, some of this stuff is still a little bit sticky because I'm definitely at the end of it. Like it's not active, but there's just some little whispers, some little strands there that mean I don't have just that simplicity and that clarity is so helpful because the mental gymnastics that we do as women trying to figure this stuff out. I mean, I just read Kylie's message too, and I spoke to Kylie recently about her situation, and she says that it's exhausting. I'm exhausted. And the mental gymnastics that we do to try to make these things fit are exhausting. Imagine freeing up that energy and having it made available for living your life and doing all the things that you want to do. Like, what an abundant, energetic place that is, the other side of all this. And this is where the energy work is so incredibly powerful and where honesty, hand on heart, I've said this so many times, but truly, I have found working with Sarah to be more helpful than therapy. And I've done lots of therapy in my life, but therapy can often just, you can keep going into these loops and it can be helpful. I'm not writing therapy off completely, but cutting through energetically and just working into that simplicity and the actual is this to the light or to the shadow? It really does come down to that. It's so simple in the end. Um, so I'll come back to Diane, but just because it's very much on theme of what we're talking about, I just want to read Kylie's message, which is same for me. I've just split up with my partner and was working overtime on the relationship. That describes it so well, especially for the last 5+ years. I'm exhausted. The betrayal is now evident, and whilst devastated, I also feel free. Kylie. I feel like that just really summarizes the sort of pattern that we've just spoken to in such a clear way. And Kylie's very beautifully humble and I'm sure wouldn't specifically ask for it herself, but I'm definitely going to ask Sarah to send her some special healing because she's a wonderful woman and has been let down by a man. And it's really hard. It's really hard. Um, Megan's saying, I feel so bad for the children, but I know they'll be better off if it's what needs to happen. Yes. And Sarah's saying Sarah's amazing. Sorry, Chelsea's saying Sarah's amazing. So much healing for me with her work. So Diane, Sarah has a slightly different energy, a sort of energetic request, which is around end of life. I'm just going back to her message. She's asking healing around the end of life, a parent coming soon in the midst of family estrangement, her sister. So many old things are surfacing, especially my own shadow stuff. Do you want to speak a little bit about this idea of like life and death and what happens when we're working with someone who's passing or passed, Sarah?
Yes. I just want to loop back first. So, just when we are working overtime, that is, so just looping back to Kylie and also Megan, that is overgiving. So the overgiving pattern is the fear links back to the fear of abandonment. So this is really the pattern that you want to focus on or put your energy into healing because we overgive so that we won't lose someone so that that doesn't get triggered, that fear of abandonment doesn't get triggered. So I just wanted to add that bit there as well. And we did do some healing yesterday on that fear of abandonment. And I think we all have it at some level. And we'll also do some healing on the betrayal piece as well. In terms of, parents passing, I'm not a medium. It is not my particular gift. I am a intuitive healer and channel essentially. But how I understand it is that we it's when our the physical body expires, this vehicle expires, the soul still exists. And it's almost like they then become your spirit guides in your life. And often we will cycle back in with the same people, which is why you will meet people, you'll be like, I just feel like I know you. When you've had that feeling, I feel like I know you. They may not come back in that same dynamic, like as a parent, it might be a different dynamic next time. But I certainly, and I'm not sure what your beliefs are around this, Katie, from your perspective, but I certainly believe that we reincarnate with people again and that we will cycle back through with them and that they can become our spirit guides when they've passed. And I've got a client who you actually know, Katie, she's a client of yours as well. And she often speaks to her parents and asks for signs from her parents. And they literally, like, they'll come, like, usually they come in like wing formed birds, butterflies, insects, that kind of thing. They actually arrive in that form. And so and I'm not saying that like reduces the grief of leaving of losing a parent. I'm very lucky that I have both my parents are still alive, and I can't even imagine a world without my mum in it. Like that, just even thinking about it, like it comes up. And so, there's certainly a grief period, and there's also, and it does take a couple of years usually because usually it takes, the grief is so extreme at first. But after, as the grief starts to subside, there is a real potential to start to still communicate with people, loved ones who have passed. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Katie.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I mean, in the yogic scriptures, particularly Bhagavad Gita, it tells us that most likely the significant people in your life you've had many past lives with. So there are karmas that bind parents and children, people that have children together, significant partners in your life. And there's also, and so yes, absolutely, like many times over. And I find that inspiring in terms of like doing the work of healing in this lifetime, because if not now, it's coming for you again. Like may as well heal this relationship in this lifetime because otherwise, and healing sometimes means walking away. Let's be clear about that too. Healing doesn't mean, it doesn't mean doing mental gymnastics to make it all okay. Um, Although sometimes it also does mean working through things. It can mean that too. But yeah, these cycles and the loops are absolutely it's in fact the way it's described in sort of translation is we have a commitment to these karmas until they're seen through. So like Sarah was using interesting language yesterday. She was talking about soul contract, right? Which is a sort of modern way of saying you've made a commitment as you've come in, whether you're conscious of it or not, that there is something that you are going to work through in this lifetime. And we sometimes know that because we instantly recognize someone that we don't know. I'm sure you've all had that experience of meeting someone for the first time. Could even just be a friend. I have a really close friend, a beautiful woman called Nisha. We've been friends for years and we met in a park. Our kids were playing. And years later, after becoming friends, we both, not straight away because that'd be kind of odd, but we both acknowledged that when we met, we instantly knew that we were going to be friends. Like we just have a soul level friendship connection. And we both had that moment of like, I know this is going to be significant. I had that experience when I met my teacher, Sharon Gannon. I remember it so clearly. When she walked into the room, I had a moment of just like, this is my teacher. And so almost always there's karmic threads, but like soul contracts, past life connections there. And as Sarah says, if we are open-minded enough about it, then we can have contact and communication through the realms. The only thing that really prevents that is that we've told ourselves it's not possible and we've been conditioned to believe it's not possible. But I have seen all of my children when they were younger talk about relationships, people, experiences that are not of this lifetime, as if they were real. If you've got very young children around you and you ask them questions, people often put it down to, oh, it's an imaginary friend or, it's like a fantasy or something like that. I'm convinced that they're speaking about past life experiences in a very ordinary way, because to them it is very ordinary until, we kind of close it all down. Um, okay, so let's see. Sona, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. She says, I'm at the stage where I feel blank, empty, and indifferent in my relationship. The anger and disappointment has left now, but I'm still not feeling ready to let go. And I'm struggling being in this no man's land. Um, do you want to say something to that, Sarah? No, and I guess numbness is the kind of overall theme there. That is a thing that can definitely come up.
Yeah, there are stages. I think men and women, like if we're just talking about a heterosexual relationship here, men and women, I think, process relationships really differently. Women tend to process the end of a relationship during the relationship, like the sadness, the disappointment, the feeling let down, all those sorts of things tend to come up. And then there are phases of that. And one of the phases is indifferent. Like I just don't even care anymore. And what we don't want it to do is get to the contempt phase. Because once it's in contempt, there's absolutely never, ever any coming back, but then not even a harmonious separation. And so the, yeah, the indifference is the gap between your expectations at what is actually happening and your expectations and the indifference and the expectation disappointment is that gap in between. And so there's a whole lot of things to take into account as well. When there are children involved, that's a whole nother ball game. And I don't have my own children, so I have never in a relationship breakup have had to, deal with that kind of those logistics. Um, but essentially, again, I would be coming back to this question: is this the best thing for my soul? Is this revealing more of my light or is it dimming my light? Like, really, that is the only question that we need to ask ourselves. And you will get to the point where, when you ask yourself that question enough, if you start asking yourself that question every day, the clarity is going to come and come and come and come. And it might be actually that, well, I can actually reveal more of my light in this relationship because it's showing me this wound and now I'm actively healing it. And this person is just playing the role to bring that up so that we can heal it. And if we can move through it, then what is then possible? But both parties have to be on board for that. It doesn't work if only one party is on board. And I think that happens a lot in relationships. And then once the relationship ends, it's usually about 6 months later that they actually realize and they want to then make the effort. And so and by that time, it's usually too late for a woman. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience, but I've certainly had that experience where, yes, by the time the relationship's ended, I'm sad, but I'm like the relationship's ended for me. Like that decision, I don't think as women we take lightly. It's usually not like a really knee-jerk reaction for us. And it is, I feel like I've just seen it as women tend to process the end of a relationship inside of the relationship. Would that Does that make sense, Katie?
Absolutely. I think, yeah, spot on. And so we come out the other end actually in a more healed, reconciled place with a lot more understanding and reflective capacity. Again, because we're doing the work, right? There we are journaling and meditating and talking to our girlfriends and having healing sessions with Sarah and figuring it all out. And by the time we get to the end, we're like, yeah, I've made my decision. I'm clear. This is integrated within me. Um, Whereas perhaps the other person hasn't gone through that process and it might be more of a shock to them or the processing happens later. But yeah, I completely agree. Of course, not in every case, but I think it's very, very common. I wanted to say something else about the numbness as well, that sometimes, not always, but sometimes feeling very numb can be a trauma response because you just don't have capacity to process what's been happening, especially if you're very busy. If you are working and you have commitments, if you're looking after elderly parents or looking after children, or you've just got stuff you have to do like every other woman in the world, sometimes you don't have the time and space to do the processing and to actually feel because you know that feeling might lead to unraveling for a period of time. And so our body, mind, spirit containers hold this incredible wisdom and ability to just kind of keep us a little bit numb until such time as the processing can happen. Now, that's completely okay. And what I've noticed in myself is actually, if I trust that process, when I need to process something, it'll bubble up and I can kind of deal with it. Like my body and my mind and my psyche has actually this incredible wisdom that I'll be given just enough at the right time to deal with. What you want to be careful with is that you don't numb out for so long and really go into denial and suppression because that turns inward. That actually can become very toxic. And I don't know if you agree with this, Sarah, but I actually think that can lead even to physical disease, where if you're so refusing to kind of feel because it's too painful, it just kind of the toxicity turns inward and it can become quite debilitating. So trusting that if you've just got to get on with life, if you've just got to keep going, it's okay. The time to heal will come, but also making sure that you do make that time and it doesn't become a pattern of suppression and denial. Because in the end, in my experience, what I've seen many times in others is it will come and get you.
Yeah. I had never thought about it being a trauma response before, but that makes total sense. Um, Source is very merciful. When Source is wanting to show you a pattern, they will send someone to you that you already have a soul contract with, and it will be that pattern will be shown to you in a very merciful way at first. And then if you don't learn the pattern, you'll be sent another person where it's a little bit worse. It's a little bit more triggered. It's a little bit more exacerbated. And then if you still don't learn the lesson, eventually it has to manifest in the physical body. So there's like a scale of where Source will send you the people to bring up these wounds as an opportunity for healing. And if you keep ignoring them, there has to be a physical manifestation. For me, I'm such an emotion, I can be a very emotional person. When something upsets me in a relationship, I really feel it like so intensely, but I feel it very intensely for like 24, 48 hours and then I'm out of it. So I never, ever, ever hold on to anything. I move through it very quickly. I don't just try to walk over it, get over it. Like I fully let myself experience whatever is happening in that relationship dynamic so that it's not getting stuck in my body. Because what happens if we aren't dealing with the emotions, there's what's called a compounding effect, where we layer another emotion on top of another emotion, on top of another emotion, on top of another emotion. And if we've had 20 years of compounding, then that is going to result in some kind of physical issue, whether that's just inflammation in the body, feeling like achy and sore, or, an earache. Like I just had a client before this session, and she had an earache from, like a dynamic that's playing out in her life. So absolutely, and I think more sometimes more so for women because we are so much more in tune with our emotions. It can result in some kind of physical manifestation for sure.
And I would say I've seen it many, many times for women. It often shows up as reproductive health stuff. So the intimate relationship stuff will show up as, could be, endometriosis, infertility, a lot like period pain, womb pain, ovarian cysts. And we have to be really careful here. I'm not saying it always means that, but the patterning correlates enough that it's worth looking at. It's definitely worth looking at and paying attention to, because what doesn't get discharged gets held, and eventually it's going to manifest itself in some way. So the flip side to that is I've actually found in healing my own healing journey that as well as working with Sarah and doing things like the journaling and that type of mental processing, sometimes somatic work and like womb healing type meditative work can be really, really helpful. There's a woman who I will also link in the notes in the for those who are interested. Her name's Christina McBoyle. She's a very interesting healer. She's not really a healer. What does she do? She guides women in processes to not hold trauma in the body. That's what she does, and specifically around relationship and womb work. Now, I don't agree with everything she says. There's some stuff she teaches that is not my cup of tea, but I've had really, really good results with her meditations and her guided processes. So I definitely recommend her or someone that does that type of somatic release work, because sometimes when we let go of a tension that we're holding in the body, then we actually start being able to do the processing. So going back to Sona who's feeling numb, maybe the first step out of that is to start feeling into what's happening in your body. Because often that mental numbness can also be connected to dissociation of how you're feeling in your body. And, without going down the rabbit hole too much, that can also manifest itself sexually as well. So if you are in a relationship where you're repeatedly showing up intimately for somebody, but you're not actually fully expressed and enjoying that, like you're doing it more to keep the peace or because you think you should, or whatever other dialogue you have going on, again, that's going to be held in your body. So this type of somatic release work can be really helpful. um, okay, so going back to the end of life conversation, we're kind of darting in between in the chat, but Abby is saying that she connected with her dad this morning who passed last year. I had been pushing him away as I was scared to feel the grief. However, it's really shifted some resistance for me. Um, and then Mel is saying, it took me so long to leave my now ex-husband. We also have kids together, working through healing my wounds, especially around taking responsibility for things that are not mine, which have come up from my ex-husband and sister. It's painful, but taking small steps to love and care for myself. Beautiful. Yeah, like figuring out this is not my stuff to take responsibility for. I do not have to be responsible for everything. Again, those mental gymnastics that we so often do. Okay, we've got 20 minutes left. I feel like we might have time for one more person. There's usually someone that's been holding back that might want to just drop something in the chat. If you've been a little bit cautious or fearful, I can see Corinne smiling. Perhaps she'll pop something in the chat for us. Um,
I might say it instead of writing it down.
please go ahead.
This is a non-romantic relationship, not a husband, but I have a childhood friend that I've had like for 50 years. But she's been going through quite a bit of mental stuff and burnout. So she's been really mean and paranoid. And so I had to step back just to protect myself, not to, because it was getting really bad. And so the other friends, but now I have this really guilt, like not being there for my friend. And I know Sarah says some relationships don't last, but I'm not sure if this is the end or if I should reach out again. I don't know how to do this. So a bit of healing around that, Sarah.
Absolutely. And have you had a chance to listen to the healing? Yes, I know you weren't able to make the live session. So there was something I mentioned in that healing session yesterday, which is it is not our job to save or fix anyone. When we save or fix someone, we are taking away their soul lesson. It's almost like we're taking away their own sovereignty, their own life path. It's not our job to do that. But what we can do is ask for guidance about how we can support someone. So, for example, my dad has struggled with manic depression his whole life, and he gets depression probably every 9 years, and it's really like dark and deep. And he's on about month 5 now. And normally I would rush in and I would try to fix him. And I mean, the things that I've done when he's been in an episode like this in the past. I've flown him to Australia. I've taken to him to a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I paid for 10 sessions with my healer at the time. Like, how can I fix? How can I fix? How can I fix? And this time, I've just stood back and I'm not asking how I can fix him. I am just saying to Source, if there is any way I can support him, not fix him, not save him. That is not my role. But if there's some support, then show me, send me the guidance, and then I will mention it to him. But that is where I stop. I don't step in, I don't interfere. I don't like, okay, well, I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do this. It's not, that's not my role. It's if I receive the guidance, I share the guidance, but then ultimately it is up to him to do what he wants with that guidance. And it's such a hard thing to kind of step back, especially when it's someone that we love so much. It's hard to see someone, you know, spiral and be unwell or self-sabotage. But ultimately, we have to honor everyone's journey. And I think it's one of our biggest lessons as a woman to learn how to lean back and trust that everyone is on their own life path. And of course, if there's some way we can support, we will. But it is not our job to step in and take over. And but yeah, guilt is something that can absolutely come up. And you know, I'm dealing with another client who has like a similar experience as this at the moment, like, and then the guilt comes up. So we'll do a bit of releasing on the guilt. So we have about 15 minutes left, and I have 2 pages of notes. So do you mind if I just get into the healing, and we'll do as much healing as we can. If we go a little bit over and you need to jump off, is there any time that you absolutely need to be off by, Katie, if we just go at a little bit over? And when what we will do is when I'm sending healing, I will be sending healing to the whole group, not just a person individually, because everything that has been shared today, we've all had an experience like that sometime in our life that has been compounded in our system and not fully healed, or even in a past life. So, everything that was shared today, we have all been through that at some point in some capacity, whether it was this lifetime or a past lifetime that potentially hasn't cleared from our system. So, what we're going to do is we are invoking the highest level of healing for all the participants of the relationship mirror, whether they are here live or listening to the replay. And we're just going to start by sending healing for whatever it is that is needed in this moment. and in this moment. And in this moment. And the first thing that's coming through is this quote, which is the quality of our relationships determine the quality of our life. The quality of our relationships determine the quality of our life. And I think this is more, even more so for women, or, people who are more feminine in nature, because we all have feminine male aspects to us. I find that men, or the more masculine people, can compartmentalize a little bit more, but particularly for, female people, woman, we tend to, when we have something going on in relationships, it impacts every single area of our life. Every area. It permeates into every area of our life. So, if the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our relationships, the message from Source is prioritize healing your relationship patterns, and everything else will take care of itself. Everything, trust me, everything else will take care of itself. But when we can heal these, when we really focus and prioritize healing these foundational, fundamental relationship patterns, there's like a domino effect that then happens from that. So we're sending healing for, these relationship patterns that we spoke about yesterday, those 4 relationship patterns, and particularly, the fear of abandonment that has, come up in today's conversation. Whether that has manifested as betrayal, separation, disillusionment, heartbreak, uncertainty, or confusion. We're sending healing for all of that. Anywhere where it's been stored in your system, whether that's been at a mental level or at a cellular level through the rest of your body, whether that is from a past life or your current life, going all the way back through your childhood. We're just asking Source to come in and just to start to lift those compounded emotions that you've layered and stacked and layered and stacked and layered and stacked, one after the other, after the other, after the other. We're also going to send healing for guilt and gaslighting oneself. There's I think it's a psychological term. It's called the sunk lost fast fallacy or something like that. I will look it up and I will send it to Katie. But it's this idea that we've already invested so much, we can't walk away from it now. And this is what gambling is based on. This is what a pokie machine is based on. If you've ever been to like a casino and you've sat at the pokies, or you've seen people at the pokies, the idea is, well, I've already put in $100. What if I walk away and the next person wins $100,000? This is what this is, and we do this with relationships. And this is how we gaslight ourselves. We put so much energy and so much energy and so much energy. We're like, well, if I walk away, I've lost all that energy that I've put in, right? I've lost that $100 that I put into the pokie machine, and then the next person can get it. And honestly, the amount of women I've heard, why couldn't he, in his next, he's given up the drinking now and he's given up the whatever it is, and now he's like an amazing partner. Why couldn't he be that with me? Right? That is one of the biggest fears I think women have when they're leaving a relationship. But not all relationships are like s- people come into your life for certain reasons to teach you certain things. And the soul contract they have with someone else is going to be completely different, which is why we often see people sometimes, but not always, but sometimes behaving differently in relationships because the soul contract they had with you might be to trigger your fear of abandonment so that you overgive, 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 end up burnt out, exhausted, and separated anyway. Right? It's to bring up that relationship pattern so that you can heal it. And you would have heard me say this yesterday, it is not to punish you. Every single relationship we have, every single interaction we have is an opportunity for our soul's expansion. And sometimes the lesson, if we go back to this idea of the gambling machine, and we keep putting the money in, putting the money in, putting the money in, sometimes the lesson is actually leaving. And we forget that. It's to heal this, maybe the self-esteem or the self-worth wound or the fear of abandonment wound. So we're sending healing for this pattern of, well, I've already put so much energy in. And there's also sometimes that, oh my God, it means I'm going to have to start all over again. And sometimes that just feels harder than staying in a miserable relationship. So we're sending healing also for the fear of starting over, the fear of losing what you've already put into the relationship. It's already lost. The energy's already put in. Once you've put the energy in, the energy's gone, just so you know. So you're not actually losing anything. You don't lose anything as long as you learn the lesson. You only lose when you don't learn the lesson, and then you have to repeat that same pattern again. And it will be amplified the next time. That's just the way it works. It's kind of like, okay, you didn't hear it then, so now I'm going to scream a little bit louder. Okay, still didn't hear it, so now I'm going to scream a little bit louder. And that's what Source does. Source puts a bigger challenge in your way if you don't learn the soul lesson. So prioritize healing these relationship patterns. Come back and listen to that healing from tomorrow 10 times if you need to. From yesterday, sorry, not from tomorrow, from yesterday. Come back and just listen as many times as you need to so that you can heal and evolve to that next lesson. And yes, there's going to be another soul lesson, but trust me, it's not going to be as painful as the one that you're in now. So we're sending healing for fear and guilt and guilt and fear. And we're up leveling the healing again and again and again and again. For that fear of loss, that fear of what you've already put in. We're also sending healing for gaslighting, receiving gaslighting from someone else, or gaslighting oneself, and any second guessing. Gaslighting oneself is really second guessing and doubting your own inner knowing. That's what we're doing when we are internally gaslighting ourselves. We're second guessing and doubting our own inner knowing. So you basically go to war with your intuition, with your soul, with your inner knowing when you gaslight yourself. Your human aspect goes to war with your soul. I've never heard it presented that way before, but that makes total sense. So we're sending healing for this war between the human self and the soul, or what Katie calls the spirit soul, and pitting those two aspects of yourself against one another through this gaslighting, through this, did I make this up? Or was it really that bad? Or am I overreacting? And we're up leveling the healing again and again for any gaslighting that you've done to yourself. And we've all done it to ourselves sometimes. And it might not have even been in a romantic relationship. It could have been with a sibling or with a boss that we've had in the past, or a work colleague. So we're up leveling the healing again and again for any internal gaslighting that has taken place, which Katie so beautifully called it, this mental gymnastics. And we're also sending healing to the mind for interference, because this is where the gaslighting comes from. So interference is a term that I use a lot in my healing. So if you're not aware, it's that sort of like the monkey mind, the overthinking, it's the patterns, the programs all being triggered. It creates this huge amount of interference and distortion and discombobulation in the mind. And this is where we can end up going in cycles and gaslight ourselves and all of that. So we're sending healing for interference stored in the mind, connected to the ways that where we haven't been kind to ourselves in the past. And we're up leveling the healing again and again and again. I also want to send some healing for the grief. The grief of a loved one passing, a parent or someone in our life who we have lost. We've only lost them in physical form. We haven't lost them in spirit form. And in many ways, they're actually closer to us in some ways, because we can literally communicate with them whenever we want. We can ask for guidance from them whenever we need it, once they're in spirit form. And yes, it does take sometimes a while to overcome the grief before you can do that, but it is absolutely a possibility. You've just got to be open to receiving the messages from the spirit world. And you can simply do that by just, like Abby mentioned, just having a conversation with whoever it is who has passed, whether you do that out on a walk, whether you do that in meditation, whether you do that while you're maybe doing some gentle stretching. There's no perfect way to do it. I actually pray when I'm out walking. I find I'm much more focused when I'm out walking, and it's such a beautiful time to pray when you're in nature. And I put on some meditation music and I just pray. And this is when you can ask for the guidance to come through. It's simply a matter of being open to receiving that guidance. And I'm also acknowledging that when someone passes, there is real grief and real loss. I'm not overstepping that. Absolutely not. There is real grief, real sadness, and a real sense of loss. So we're also sending healing for that. We're also going to send some healing for estrangement, whether you've been estranged from a friend or a family member or someone in your life who you love. It can happen. And sometimes it's okay to step back from a relationship for a while, or, if it does need to be for this whole lifetime, that can happen. But sometimes it's also just needed for a while in order to protect ourselves. We do need to care for our own energy first. That is really important. Otherwise, it's actually dangerous to give if you're not caring for your own energy first. And sometimes that does mean just creating a little bit of distance, a little bit of separation. And so we're sending healing for any guilt associated or attached to that, and also the bereavement of that lost friend or that lost sibling, or if there's been anyone in your life you've chosen to step away or has chosen to step away from you. We're sending healing for that sense of loss and that sense of bereavement. Okay, and I'm just going to have Source scan the group to see if there is anything else that we need to heal and clear today. So yesterday we put on in place this healing balm, and I just want to place more of that in place for everyone today. It's like a beautiful, soothing, healing balm around the heart. It's also asking for it around the top of this the in the nervous system, but specifically around the top, kind of around the shoulder blades as well. Sometimes this can be the place where we feel, energetically stabbed in the back. So I think we've all had that experience before. That's like that idea of betrayal. So we're just going to place the healing balm in those two places. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull a card for us all to complete from my Oracle pack. And we're just going to call in any guidance from Source that wants to come through today. So the endings card did come through, and the endings card is, the amount of pain and suffering that is associated with an ending. And we have micro endings all the time, and sometimes we have bigger endings. Um, but the endings are only painful when we don't, like when the door handle has to be like wrenched out of our hand because we're grasping or we're attached. But when we can let go with grace, and we can honestly say, if this relationship is for my best and highest, please open up the pathway. But if it is not, please open up that pathway. When we can look at it from, is this relationship revealing more of my light or is it dimming my light? When we can look at it from that perspective, the ending, while there will still, of course, be disappointment, doesn't need to be as painful. And then the second card is this beautiful card of the fish, which is the BU card, which is just such a beautiful reminder that our relationships are here to reveal more of who we truly are. That's what they're actually here to do. They're here to reveal more of who we truly are so we can be the highest expression of our soul in this lifetime and elevate through those soul lessons. So remember that that is the purpose of any relationship, is even when it's bringing up the yucky stuff you wish wasn't there, it's coming up so more light can be revealed, more light can be revealed, which is to be more of who you truly are at your soul level. I'm going to hand it back to you, Katie, if there is anything you would like to share or just to close the session off.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I don't really have anything to add. I think that was really powerful. And thank you all for being here and for sharing so openly. These sessions are only ever as good as the women that show up and open their hearts and make themselves vulnerable. So I'm grateful to all of you. And I know that Sarah is too, for being here and for being so open-hearted. And when we do this work together, we're not only doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our families and our loved ones and our communities. So thank you. If you have any desire for like follow up, or you have questions, or you need more support, feel free to reach out to either Sarah or myself. We're both very much available to support you in whatever ways you need. So the door is definitely open. I cannot recommend Sarah's one-to-one sessions enough. I myself have had so much deep healing work from her over the years, over many years now, and many different seasons of my life. So yeah, very, very much recommended. Those of you who are in the big portals of change right now might really benefit from some one-to-one support. Thank you all. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Sarah. Always such an honor to collaborate with you. Take care, everyone. Namaste.